Good afternoon. Today we shall be discussing John Millington Synge's one-act play, Riders to the Sea. Now, Riders to the Sea was published in Yeats's Sowin in 1903 prior to its first performance sometime in February 1904. Riders to the Sea has usually been approached by critics as a flawless masterpiece of a one-act play. The one-act play takes shape around what an early critic once referred to as the expectant anxiety and imaginative awe and fear that builds as we await the inevitable news that Moria has lost her last son Bartley to the sea. On the same day that confirmation comes of the drowning some days before of another son, Michael. Some critics have argued that Riders to the Sea does not follow Aristotelian principles closely enough to be called a tragic play. James Joyce, for example, who admired the play enough to translate it into Italian, called the Riders a dwarf drama. Riders does, however, qualify to be a tragedy because it centers around a cultural structure through which profound loss is anticipated, mediated, and represented. This tragic pattern is related to the peculiar and defining relationship that characters have with nature and the landscape. In this sense, Synge can be seen to do for rural England what James Joyce was to do for its capital city, Dublin, that is, diagnose a profound social malaise. As an island nation, Ireland has had an intimate relationship with the sea, and Riders to the Sea draws on practical, mythical, and literary aspects of the island's seafaring tradition. Aran Islands provided first-hand experience of the sea's ruthlessness and the constant negotiation with water that Cura travel demanded. Synge repeatedly notes in his Aran Islands the threat of drowning and variously experiences exhilaration, terror, and profound dejection, all aspects of the sublime in the face of the churning sea. He once says, "Even I thought if we were dropped into the blue chasm of the waves, this death, with the fresh sea saltness in one's teeth, would be better than most deaths one is likely to meet." This impassioned state of mind is soon eroded, however, when in the same work, The Aran Islands, Synge says, after a few hours, the mind grows bewildered with the endless change and struggle of the sea, and an utter despondency replaces the first moment of exhilaration. This emotional shift, so vividly captured in the Aran Islands, is significant to our understanding of Riders to the Sea because it is embedded in the keen, which Synge described as a profound ecstasy of grief. This tradition of the king, he felt, embodied no personal complaint, but seemed to contain the whole passionate rage that lurks somewhere in the heart of every native of the island. In this cry, the inner consciousness of the people seemed to lay itself bare for an instant and to reveal the mood of beings who feel their isolation in the face of a universe that constantly wars on them through the weapons of the winds and the seas. When Moria follows Bartley, we see in the play, that to deliver a blessing she had failed to utter, and bread the daughters have forgotten to give him, She experiences a vision which, like other events of the play, derives from Synge's time on the Aran Islands. Synge, in his Aran Islands, records the tale of a woman who saw her dead son riding a horse with a man who was subsequently to drown. This type of vision has roots in folklore concerned with the return of the dead to escort another to the realm of the dead. Synge was thus aware of an Irish literary tradition that frequently granted visionary capacities to central figures. The seer in medieval Irish literature was, much like Moria in the play, frequently connected to nature and possessed an ability to read the natural landscape correctly. As the only one to see the inevitability of Bartley's death should he sail under the prevailing conditions. Moria has direct links to the medieval Irish visionary. The priest, that central figure in the Irish bourgeois culture, if you may say it, is kept off stage by Synge, perhaps deliberately, and the priest's reassurances communicated through the daughters are dismissed by Moria when she says, "It's little the like of him knows of the sea." Instead, it is Moria, with her more traditional, even pre-modern knowledge of the natural world, as we may say it, who foresees what is to come. The seer in medieval literature is also often a liminal figure who is stranded in nature and who acquires special knowledge. Perhaps this description of a seer is apt for Moria, whom we see marginalized by her son and her daughters when her words and warnings go unheeded. Synge, though, makes her central, thus seeming to comment on the status of folk knowledge as well as on the status and place of such women in the community. The essential tragic import of Synge's play Riders to the Sea centers obviously around Moria's awareness of the threat of the sea, garnered through the loss of her husband and her sons, has granted her a fearful connection with the natural world. Unlike the Aristotelian tragic figure, Moria's tragedy is precisely about inaction, about having to remain behind as a woman, about the fallout after loss. The tragedy of Riders is not to be associated with Michael or Bartley, though they are the ones who die, but with Moria. She sees herself as part of a society in which women's roles are strictly defined and in which the loss of the male in a household can seem catastrophic. When Bartley advises his sisters about handling affairs in his absence, Moria immediately asks how Kathleen would, and she says, get a good price for a pig, revealing a sense that her own inability to act or exert agency is tied to her position as a woman. The priest, in contrast, despite having no experiential basis for his judgments, offers false reassurances that Bartley will survive merely because God would not deprive an old woman of her only son, and receives veneration and attention. Within the culture of the play, men can be said to dismiss or undercut the female voice with a great deal of easiness. These attempts at control ultimately fail, though, since Synge reveals that much of the power of the play resides in nature, which overwhelms the men who would not listen to the words of an old woman in full possession of the knowledges and nature's sublime potencies. Moria's relative powerlessness and her household's tragic circumstances have been alternately explained as the result of consistent violations of folk ritual, pointed out by many critics in the immediate aftermath of the first staging of Synge's play. If actions had been carried out according to prescription of folklore, Bartley's death might have been averted. That is, had Moria issued the blessing and the girls remembered Bartley's bread. It is more likely, though, that Synge purposefully positions these folk violations in the play in order to demonstrate the way the culture suggests that control and agency lie within the grasp of women and men when he himself recognizes that they do not. In the end, Moria is granted only the verbal power which Synge himself provides her. This can, though, be read as a breakthrough of some sort, after the priest's repeated words have proven empty, and after Bartley, the male head of the household, is drowned in the sea. The last word of the play is Moria's. The old woman, and not the priest, significantly enough, performs and utters what seems like a funeral oration at the end of the play. Riders to the Sea, then, is much more than a simple tale about a group of noble primitives based in the Iron Islands. It is an account of an essential and deep, long-standing cultural battle, a battle whose tragic outcome is as predictable as is the death of Bartley. Viewing the play as a psychologically accurate depiction of turn of the century Irish peasants, rather than as an idyllic, romanticized picture of them, expands our understanding of the characters and offers new and revelatory insight into the interaction among them and provides a fresh explanation for Moria's way of dealing with Bartley. It is to Synge's credit that he so honestly and accurately portrayed conflicts between man and nature in the limited canvas of a one-act play. It is this pithy accuracy which gives to the play the depth and resonance of a major work of art.